Welcome back and thanks for staying with us. You're watching Daybreak and the hashtag on X is Citizen Daybreak. The SMS code is 22422 at Citizen TV Kenya and at Ayub Abdikadir. On my far right is Yusuf Chanzu, former lawmaker. Good morning, Yusuf.
Morning.
Appreciate it and many thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Asante. The very Reverend Canon Evans Omolo is also with us on the broadcast this morning from the All Saints Cathedral, a provost, of course, of the All Saints Cathedral. Good morning.
Good morning, Ayub, and good morning to all our viewers who are watching.
And Council Steve Ogola also joins us this morning here on the broadcast. Good morning, Steve.
Yeah, good morning, Ayub.
Shortly, Mule Musau will be here with us. He's the coordinator at the Election Observation Group, ELOG, which has been a key stakeholder in matters regarding elections in the country. Gentlemen, many thanks for your time. And first, beginning with you, Steve.
Ayub.
Yes, Yusuf.
I just wanted to request just 1 second.
Yes, please.
This fellow, this John, this Ngeno, Jonah.
Yeah, the lawmaker.
I had got a bit of a session with him in a number of ways. He found me in Parliament. Then I worked with him in some housing issue. Just wanted us to observe just a second.
Yes, please.
Just a minute.
Yeah.
Silent, just for a minute.
That was our beginning point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I think that's okay.
Yeah, we proceed now. Many thanks and condolences, of course, to the family of the late lawmaker and the others who died in the chopper crash in Nandi County. Steve, first beginning with you, and this is in regards to what we had just, of course, heard from the Deputy President, Professor Kithure Kindiki, forewarning the opposition players who this weekend said to be in the counties of Meru and Tharaka. But largely, all this playing out, the factional politics on the part of the opposition and also the government playing out outside the designated timelines of the campaigns is concerning, is it, to an extent, given what the High Court had said in 2025?
Yeah, well, that is concerning, but it can be explained in the context of political impunity. This country operates on a layered or structured impunity, if you like, where politicians prioritize their interests as against what may be considered as a broader national or public interest. To begin with, Ayub, political activities constitute part of free speech, protected under Article 33 and Article 38 of the Constitution. But free speech is not absolute and is not among the rights that may not be limited under Article 25, which means if there is a compelling constitutional justification for limiting the volume of speech, which includes political activities, then those activities may be regulated. You will recall that in 2007, 2008, the Kriegler report documented the corrosive effect of early campaigns on our governance. And permit me to highlight two. It said that heightened political campaigns carries the potential, the disruptive potential of slowing down economic productivity. But it also comes with corresponding increased expectation, voter expectation, which particularly at the level of presidential elections could cause desperation, and then that pressure could be translated into political violence. And therefore there is need to control political activities, particularly outside the official campaign period. The challenge that I see in the law is that the law is not clear enough to prohibit early campaigns expressly. The timelines for campaign activities stretches up to 12 months to election. Outside 12 months to election, those may be considered as the blackout period for which no political activity or heightened political activity other than the normal administrative functions of political parties may be permitted. Because 12 months to election, beginning the month of August 2026 to August 2027, IBC is required to publish campaign expenditure guidelines, which then opens the way for political candidates, aspirants, to begin to mobilize resources ahead of that election.
Okay.
But the official campaign period, usually marked to coincide with registration of candidates and the gazettement of the election date, is almost always about 60 to 70 days to the ballot.
Okay.
So these early campaigns, the conversation around them, the need to limit them is well documented. But as I've told you, the political elite operate on the philosophy of structured impunity.
Okay.
Really, it is not what should interest the public that matters, but rather their short-term partisan political interest. And that is why we're able to see campaign throughout the entire election cycle.
Yeah, and we'll also, of course, expounding much more on that, Steve, expand it to the point of the cabinet ministers who we had seen also partaking and their involvement. But Yusuf, coming to you, ideally the rationale of a political party coming up with a manifesto to be mandated to rule is what then presents the political establishment with a scorecard before the next electoral cycle, isn't it? And therefore, how does this erode that judgment platform which is granted the voter, and this early campaign's name-calling, which to some extent, according to observers, borders on instability and concerns by investors who fear because of the political climate?
Thank you so much, my brother and the brothers here. You know, all these things that we talk about, like the questions you are raising and what our brother has just talked about, you know, everything in our situation seems to generate an issue. And if you are thinking properly, and if you have seen what has been going on in this country, for some of us who have been here for some time, you know, I've been lucky or unlucky to have worked in the Nyayog system, Kibaki, Uhuru, and now Ruto. Now, what our brother there is referring to, and this is the reason why sometimes when I'm asked these questions, I end up somebody who goes to ask me, what did you say? Say that you did not answer the question, because I still believe that we've been doing things the wrong way. Even what we are referring to about the Constitution, Article 33 and so on, you know, the way we got that Constitution, there was a lot of fighting, so that I think the things, you see, this Constitution is based on the fact that the opposition had a lot of problem with the President Moi government, and they were looking for ways of removing him. And in fact, for me, once Kibaki became president, I was thinking we would have stopped and looked at it afresh. Because we have given mandates to institutions, we should not be continuing with it. You know, for example, a church is at service 24/7. But you know, when you have got an institution, like in government now, there are institutions which are called independent institutions. You know, sometimes you wonder, are they working on something like salaries 24/7? But you know, the purpose was to reduce the power from the center. But then we did not set it out properly. Because this idea of, you know, this thing has made me look again at the definition of politics. And you know, it is not about fighting. It is a matter of how you share resources, isn't it? And this is the reason why we said that we reached a stage, we said that let the center not hold it, let us go to the counties. Now you see what is running out here, because I saw Mheshimiwa Dwale the other day saying, the question you have just asked, I saw him saying on TV that the ministers are not campaigning. You know, in other words, he was saying that they are selling government agenda. But the timelines, I think, they're the ones which are the issue. Because I'm looking at a situation whereby without criticizing, you know, when somebody is in power or is in authority, maybe he's gotten that mandate, we are saying it's democratic. So you need not to challenge it as an individual, because it's many against you. But I think we need still to look at this. And I'm hoping that the lawyers can help us, that we look at this constitution again, so that we can be serious about what we are doing. Because you see the time like plowing. When it is time for plowing, it is time for plowing. When it is time for harvesting, you know, you can't now, when for harvesting, you can't go to the shamba that you are plowing. So I think I see, and we waste a lot of time, particularly when it becomes community. You know, I've seen sometimes somebody goes and mobilizes his community, like me now. If I had resources, I go and mobilize people, say in the western part of Kenya.
Yeah.
You know, that day, children cannot learn. So it is something that we need to look at deeply.
Okay.
And particularly the guys who are expert in, like them.
Yeah. Steve also gave us a breakdown, or tying it up to what he termed as layered impunity, and the guidelines that ought to be out before the next elections. So allow me to go to the canon. I mean, the playbook seems to be the same, whether the government or the opposition. The race is for power. But the manner in which they are doing is concerning, is it, from your perspective as part of the men of cloth?
Yeah, sure, Ayub, thanks. And to my fellow panelists here, I think what's going on in the country is really concerning. Concerning in the sense that it is tweaked more towards stirring up the public, not in a very positive way. Yeah. But Ayub, I note that the political campaigns, or whatever you want to call it, in my view, that tone is initially set by the president and the government. By the president first, by what he says, and by government in the sense of what they do. So the president, like his CSS, will go around and say, we are explaining government policy, we are enabling people to see what we've done or what we want to do, and occasionally they'll be on an attack mode. That prompts responses from the political players, including the opposition. And therefore, that tone is set at that very high level. But my major concern is that the politicking process seems, in my view, to undermine what really should be happening now. Because the phase we are in, we must remember that both government and all politicians who are elected are in their fourth year out of the 5 years that they were elected for, meaning they have done full 3 years. Yeah. This season, as you did mention, should be a time of explaining to the electorate, this was our manifesto, and this is what we have done. Because they only have 1 year to the next general elections. And therefore, it's not about promises, because what we see are about promises, are about personal attacks. So it's not really issue-based, but you see people attacking each other, others threatening you shouldn't come to this region. But we are not interrogating the scorecard. Yeah. What has the government done? What did they say they will do? What is the difference there? And what do they want to do with this remaining 1 year before we go to the next election? Because what I fear, Ayub, and my fellow panelists and viewers, is that we're getting into a space where we're beginning to receive more promises, yet what was promised and what was anchored in the manifestos hasn't been, one, interrogated, and indeed hasn't been delivered. And therefore...
Or unmet, yeah.
Or definitely unmet or completely disregarded. Yeah. And I think we need to move beyond political rhetoric, name-calling, threats, promises, but say, what is the framework within which we came into power, whether you are in opposition, whether you're a political party, whether you're a government, a ministry, agency, etc., etc., so that we tone down the political temperatures.
Yeah, and Steve will give us a breakdown of also further explainer on the cabinet secretaries. Certainly, Canon, they have largely been, of course, championing the re-election of the president in as far as government also delivery projects are concerned, which was largely outweighed by their re-election call for the president. Also joining us here on the broadcast this morning is Mule Musao, coordinator with the Election Observation Group, ELOG. And Mule, briefly coming to you, as a stakeholder with the key interest in the management of elections in the country, all this campaign build-up points to, isn't it, an exacerbation of political tensions in the country, given that appreciating the style of our democracy since multipartyism in 1991, which has been peace first and violence later, if you look at the cycles in the aftermath of 1992. How do you look at it from ELOG's perspective?
Well, first, good morning, gentlemen. I hope Steve, because I see Steve here, he has already mentioned the issue of bad manners.
Yeah.
Because I think the biggest problem that we have in this country is basically, practically, bad mannered leadership. And it's bad manners nearly everywhere, not just the leaders, but it's bad manners, what we need to deal with. There's a method to the madness of how we should conduct our politics. And I think I heard Mheshimiwa here talking about going back to the definition of politics, because we need to understand maybe what is this thing that we call politics and how are we supposed to run it. There must be a method to the madness. We have laws in which we need to conduct our affairs. As stakeholders, as serious stakeholders in this thing, when we talk about this framework, when you are making up a building, kuna hiyo msingi unatafuta. There must be something that instructs the architect and the builders on what they need to do at every point. There is a structure, there is a plan. In elections and when it comes to politics, we have laws. It's a legal framework which gives us timelines, which gives us the specifications of what needs to be done at what point. We don't follow that, unfortunately. And that's where the problem is. And it's not being followed because it is not there. It is not being followed because it cannot be understandable. These are people who understand these laws. I mean, the legislators have gone through a lot of the courses, just even being explained what this means and what the other means. Before they even legislate on anything, there's a school of experts will be there to advise them on what needs to be done at what stage. So all the things which are in the Katiba are things which are attainable and which are followable. So when people decide not to, it's like you have a gate and you have a fence and people still want to jump over the fence. Because you know the procedures, you know what you're supposed to do. So for us, I think the kind of environment that we are looking at currently is a state of impunity where the leadership decides not to follow what the protocols are written down protocols. They refuse to adhere to the constitutions, the laws of the country. We shouldn't be having campaigns. We shouldn't be having campaigns at all. Abuse of incumbency, it is the highest. Members of the opposition are in rallies each and every day. You can't there's no other way to explain those things other than people who have decided not to follow the rule book. Mm-hmm. And the rule book is, we have all the sharias in the country that guide how the process is supposed to be. So we are very concerned as ILOG, as stakeholders, that if this is what we are going to use, if this is a kind of environment that we're going to be used to determine how we're going to be choosing our leadership, how we're going to be processing our elections, then basically we are headed towards the wrong direction.
Okay. When we get back from the break, we have an hour to run through everything. Steve and Yusuf, I'll begin with you as we expound much more on this, and certainly the no dull day culture by the political establishment in Kenya, and to that extent consequential polls that are coming the Kenya way in 2027 next year by the grace of God. The hashtag on X is Citizen Daybreak. The SMS code is 22422 at Citizen TV Kenya and at Ayub Abdikadir. More on this after the break here on the broadcast. Stay with us.